Godforsaken is an incredible name for a fantasy book. The name conjures up some great Dark Souls imagery. It's got FromSoft energy, right? What is this RPG about? Is it a dark land abandoned by the gods and you're its only hope? Are you cursed and now must fight the gods in a personal war? Well, actually, it's just a guidebook on how to make your own fantasy world in the Cypher system. Welcome to the Dead Unicorn. My name is Corey, and we are doing another Cypher White Book review, this time on Godforsaken, a book that wants you to develop your own fantasy world. Godforsaken is part of the White Book collection of setting or genre books for the Cypher system. White books help narrators and players with that genre, like sci-fi or post-apocalyptic, horror, anything you can think of. Godforsaken is about classic fantasy, but there are books for fairy tale fantasy and modern fantasy. If you're new to the Cypher system, it is an endurance-based system that uses levels for every challenge. To do a task, a player spends the correct amount and type of endurance from 3 pools, might, speed, and intellect, then rolls a d20 in hopes of rolling equal to or above the level of the task. Tasks can be eased, reducing the difficulty, or hindered, increasing it. NPCs and static tasks are treated the same, with their base level setting the difficulty for any task against them. This is one of the simplest but very fun systems I've ever played. Instead of classes, races, or species, Cypher has types and foci, which take the place of classes, and descriptors, which take the place of species. If you'd like a deeper dive into the Cypher system, please check out my full review on this channel. It's also a good time to hit that subscribe button if you like RPG stuff. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of that stuff here. Godforsaken is a book in 2 parts. The first is how to build your own fantasy RPG world, and the second is their personal world of the Cypher system, the world of Godforsaken. I'll be tackling both sections separately, but I want to point out that this book, for the most part, is a GM or narrator-focused book. It has tools to create a world or to use the world given to make great adventures. This is not to say there aren't tools here for players, but I'll get to that in a bit. The world building section is very robust, taking a would-be game master or narrator by the hand and leading them through the steps of making their own world. If you already have a world you've been working on for a while, it's still good to check this book out because it will start asking you questions about what you've created you may not have thought of before. It's kind of like checking your work or helping you fill in details. Then we get into character creation, and this is where things get a little murky. So let me explain. Like I said, this book is mostly for narrators and is not very player friendly, but it wants players to use the book to create characters. This is where we run into a problem because the book doesn't give you a barbarian type or a cleric foci. It's not interested in giving players a guide to character creation. No. Instead, it gives suggestions on how a narrator can build that type or focus. For example, if you want a bard to be a profession in your game, they are usually explorers or speakers. It doesn't say what they are, it tells you what rules you might associate with them if you want them in your game. Because D&D has set the stage for what a fantasy RPG looks like, it's weird not to have staples of the fantasy genre locked in and ready for a player to just point to it and go. D&D here takes the edge on making character creation simpler, even though I think Cypher is technically a simpler system to play. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be these guides for creating new things like types and foci and species. You'll want to create these things if you're making a bespoke world. But having the narrator reinvent the wheel seems unnecessary. Why do I have to create bards all over again? One of the strengths of Dungeons & Dragons is that you can take their classes and races and just create a new world around them. Most of the heavy lifting is already done, and that's one of the reasons it's king around these parts. When a player is trying to navigate between the Godforsaken and Cypher rulebook, trying to make a character, flipping back and forth between the 2 different character creation sections and the a la carte power section, it can be a little confusing. I've had players do this, and it was frustrating for them compared with other Cypher settings that have all of the powers listed under their type. So I would suggest just making a document with all of the powers and types and foci, and what those powers do listed under that type. You know, like a player's guide. I want to point out that there are some other fantasy books for Cypher as well, like Tidal Blades, Diamond Throne, and Tulis. Tidal Blades and Diamond Throne have almost exclusively new fantasy species or strange bents on common species. Tulis has the common classes and species because they have a 5e Dungeons & Dragons version of Tulis. But in the Cypher version, right, what it says to do is go back to Godforsaken and Cypher and use that to create your character. This is infuriating for players who just want to pick a type, focus, and descriptor. And now they're flipping through 3 giant books trying to make a character. So what's a game master to do here? The good news is that the fans have picked up the slack. There is a thing called the Cypher Creator System, which allows anyone to make their own rules for Cypher, publish, and sell them. Mortal Fantasy is a third-party accessory that is basically a player's guide for fantasy. And it does all the heavy lifting of what, for example, a bard actually is. A player can just look at that, follow the guideline, make their character. Bing, bang, boom, Bob's your uncle. But we're not doing a review of Mortal Fantasy. We're doing a review of Godforsaken. So what does Godforsaken do right? Well, it does pick up the slack when it comes to new foci and fantasy species. It gives good rules for common species like halfling and gnome, and exotic ones like catfolk and dragonfolk. The new foci are fantastic as well, allowing new options on how a character can define themselves, like the ability to use wild magic. They actually take the subtle Cypher rules and make them your magical effects. I mean, this was a great way to use those rules. I also love wields an enchanted weapon, which I used to create a Thor-like character with this magic hammer. So you see, when Godforsaken actually lays out the options, they work. Lastly, they have a section on the small parts of what make a fantasy game great. A huge list of traps and how to use them, an entire section on making magical items, another on rituals and what they are and how to fit them in your game, a lot of NPCs, and magical artifacts to populate your world. My favorite part is the takedown of anti-magic. The book has strong takes on why anti-magic is a terrible idea, and I really can't dispute their argument. That alone is reason enough to buy the book, in my opinion. But the main reason is the step-by-step world building. Even if you don't want to run Cypher, it's a great resource just on its own. But what about the world inside? What is the world of Godforsaken? It's a high fantasy world broken into 4 parts. This plays out like one of those anime where there's a safe harbor, a place of relative peace where adventurers group up and decide which level of the dungeon they think would be best. Then they gear up and they dive in. It's explicitly stated here that adventurers don't do this for much more than love of adventure, just like those popular anime. The safe harbor is called the Sacrante, and it's ruled by 5 gods. And these 5 gods keep the area safe. People here don't need to worry about bad stuff happening, like crime, monsters, disease, because the 5 gods keep things running smoothly. These gods walk around in the world physically. They're there. You can go to church and worship, and they are there to be worshipped. Yes, just like in those popular anime. So if the gods have such a close relationship to everyone, why is it called Godforsaken? Well, it's those other 3 lands. Once you cross a river or move through a portal into a new world, the gods forsake you, and you are on your own, using your wits to survive instead of leaning on them. Flavem is the land of the necromancer, and thus the dead prowl the landscape. The firmament is a mountainous land in the sky. It has natural beauty, but in that beauty is danger. Giants, fungal men, and shape-shifting spirits call it home. Korak Mar is a world of dark stone wastes, blasted with acid rain. fire-breathing wyverns perch on volcanic caldera, while living slimes pool in the lowlands, and even your own shadow can be given life to strangle you. Godforsaken is a cool place to explore for experienced RPGers, or people well-versed in fantasy genres. They'll find good stuff here to be excited about, but it may take a while for more classic fantasy fans or just people new to fantasy genres to understand what's going on. I ran the adventure Secret of the Soulsmith to some very new players, and they had a hard time grasping the concept, unlike a classical D&D world like Greyhawk. Lastly, each of the worlds, just by being there, gave a penalty to your character, because each of the worlds is godforsaken, and thus the landscape itself can be very harsh. This adds a bit of frustration on the part of players, especially new players. Trying to get a hold of what your character can do should be the focus of early games, but in Godforsaken, every world has this penalty and you have to take it into account, so it feels like you're being thrown into the deep end before you can even get comfortable. Speaking of adventures, there are two of them in this book, Secret of the Soulsmith and Within the Monstrous. Both take place in the world of Godforsaken and walk those players and the narrator through that world. And you can use it to set it up for grander adventures that you as a narrator might want to run. If you want to give Godforsaken a spin, I would recommend starting with those adventures. They're a good change of pace from other fantasy realms. So, final thoughts. I think this book is pretty great if you're looking to make a bespoke fantasy setting from the ground up, tweaking every bit of the experience. But if you're just looking to make a world by reskinning a fantasy setting like most narrators do, D&D and Pathfinder do just fine. This book is for higher level crafting. If this video helped you in your RPG journey, click that thumbs up button and subscribe for more content like this. I would like to thank my patrons on Patreon for helping me out. You can become a patron and grab my Cypher Rules Emporium book with lots of additional tools for your Cypher game. I love having conversations about RPGs with you, so don't forget to leave a comment and then get your friends, find a table, and go roll some dice.